Hello, BookTube. I've got a Tuesday Reads video for you here. I've got some books that I'll be reading today, starting with this one, Peter Hamilton's Salvation. It's an enormous new book from Peter Hamilton needs no introduction from me. He's a huge science fiction figure, and this is apparently the first book in a new series. Let me read you a bit about it here. He's a science fiction author who's hugely popular, who's never done anything for me. His work's never done anything for me. I'm going to give it a try with this one here. The year is 2204, and humanity is expanding into the wider galaxy in leaps and bounds. Cutting-edge technology of linked jump gates has rendered most forms of transportation, including starships, virtually obsolete. Every place on Earth, every distant planet humankind has settled is now merely a step away from all the others. All seemed wonderful until a crashed alien spaceship of unknown origin is found on a newly located world 89 light-years from Earth, carrying a cargo as strange as it is horrifying. To assess the potential of the threat, a high-powered team is dispatched to investigate, but one of them may not be what they seem. Okay, so you know, the one thing I know about this author, I've tried so many books of his. I've tried to get into the spirit of him so many times. The one thing I know about him is that he is perhaps the most successful practitioner working today of the space opera. Big, plot-driven, MacGuffin-driven school of science fiction that is... It's been a steady part of the genre from the beginning. It has diehard fans. I'm one of them. A lot of readers of science fiction kind of prefer the more idea-driven, concept-driven stuff, the stuff that isn't space opera. But for me, a good, juicy space opera is just what the doctor ordered. So we'll see. We'll give this a try. Then the next one is it's a reread. It's a finished copy, a lovely finished copy of something that I've read and recommended already. This is due in August. Sometime, probably the end of August. This is Preti Taneja's We That Are Young. Her debut novel, the tale of a battle for power within a turbulent family, for status within a nation built on myth, and for the love and respect of a megalomaniacal father giving in to madness. When 28-year-old Jivan Singh returns home to New Delhi after 15 years in the United States, it is only to witness the unexpected resignation of his father's boss, Devraj Bapchuli, a billionaire hotelier, political operator, and founder of the vast company with a capital C. Also known in private for vicious games of divide and rule in which he pits his 3 daughters against one another for his gold. Then Sita, Devraj's youngest and his favorite, refuses to play along, turning her back on marriage and her inheritance. Consumed with hurt and rage, Devraj splits the company between Sita's sisters, Gargi and Radha, and a brutal struggle for primacy begins. From the luxury farm in New Delhi to the palaces and slums of the fabled state, the narrative carries them all to a reckoning in the beautiful, broken city of Srinagar in Kashmir. We That Are Young gives us a near-real vision of an India corrupted, where rich men are gods while farmers starve and water is fast running out, where women who speak out are hounded, and where protest marches are the only way the people can fight back. Brilliant in its fierce, incandescent storytelling and a poetic energy of its prose, searing in its exploration of human fallibility, this novel sings with the pace of life in one of the world's fastest-growing economies. And I read it originally, and I thought it was tremendously impressive. I do believe, I could be wrong, the author is obviously smarter than I am to write a book like this and get it all the way to the sun of day. Nevertheless, I got the impression that in keeping an eye, so to speak, on Shakespeare's King Lear as a sort of template for this novel, an essential element of that template slipped by our author and was, therefore, unconsciously, completely accurately reproduced in this book. And that is the fact that the daughter who rebels and listens to her virtue and loves her father but not heaves her whole heart into her mouth is a cipher, is the least interesting character in the play, or in this case the novel. That I'll be very interested in reading this again and seeing which characters jump out at me all the more. It's a debut novel. One of the ways that you can tell that for sure is that you can tell in an instant while you're reading which of the characters personally engaged the author and which ones didn't. And that you shouldn't be able to tell that. But still, I thought it was tremendously effective. Just tremendously effective. So it'll be a reread for this Tuesday. And then a new book by Peter Biskind. This is The Sky is Falling. This is the author of Easy Riders, Raging Bulls. He's a really interesting nonfiction writer. And in this book, he has a theory. He has a theory. So let me read it to you here. I think this is due any day now. I think this is due to come out any day now. And the book's theory is what drew it to me. So we're going to see. In The Sky is Falling, Biskind describes and defines the extreme pop culture that has arisen over the past 2 decades. As his baseline, he uses the mainstream culture that reflected the values of the centrist, bipartisan coalition that dominated American society and politics from the end of World War II until the 1960s. So, centrist Democrats, centrist Republicans working together. When it was shattered by the Civil Rights Movement, Vietnam, and Watergate. Okay, but it wasn't shattered by the Civil Rights Movement. It was shattered by Watergate. But that's okay. The author's entitled to his opinion. He might change mine. Moreover, Biskind shows how the movies and TV shows examined in his book inflect the key themes and fiercely held beliefs that have become fixtures of the culture wars on the left and right. With wit and acute insight, he takes us for a walk on the wild side of pop culture, where extreme has become the accolade and mainstream is lamestream. Then we become intimately acquainted with the end of the world scenarios because extreme culture is apocalyptic culture. And he talks about Avatar and the fact that the Marines are the bad guys. He talks about The Walking Dead and a slew of disaster movies. The simple reason is that the apocalypse provides a laboratory in which we can experiment with extreme attitudes, behaviors, and measures. Biskind analyzes how the fictive worlds of pop culture have been refashioned by extremism, and how mainstream authorities have been either deregulated or just packed up their bags and gone home in the face of overwhelming odds. And this is a perfect example, I think, from this distance. I haven't read the book. I'll read it now. I'll read it today. But from the description, from the vibe I get off, it's a perfect example of a kind of reading experience that I just love, where the author grates against me before I've even read a single word of the book, and yet the author might be making sense. So I will be reading this book and I will be arguing with the author the whole time. Either that or vigorously nodding my head. So we shall see. We shall see. I'm greatly looking forward to it. And then the last one is debut. It's a debut fiction, like We That Are Young, only it doesn't come out until next year. And I'm going to read it now. I'm going to read it. It's a debut novel I'm going to read now instead of waiting, and then I'll read it again when the year turns. This is Restoration Heights by Will Medearis. And this is the galley copy. So there's Restoration Heights. Comes out in January. And that is New York Was a Feeling, a vibe, a rhythm you picked up in your bones. That is the dust jacket cover. Or rather, that is the dust jacket cover. This, I don't know what this is. I'm hoping that when this is made as a book, when it comes out as a hardcover, I'm hoping that this will be the dust jacket, but that this will be here somewhere. Maybe this will be clear acetate laid over this or whatever. I'm hoping we don't lose this, because I really like this. That thing on the top of the building is a water tower. And those of you who are familiar with the New York of the 21st century will scarcely know what that is, except in movies. Once upon a time, they blossomed from rooftops all over Manhattan like flowers. There were thousands of them. I don't know how many there are left anymore, but there can't be many. There can't be many. They used to be a weird, but nevertheless instantly recognizable feature of New York City. And I read, this is yet another novel about the gentrification of New York. Let me read you a bit here. This one takes a slightly more plot-driven approach to gentrification than did the last gentrification novel, which was Bed-Stuy is Burning, which was really, really good. This is essentially the exact same novel, only I think it takes a more plot-oriented thing. Reddick, a young white artist, lives in Bedford-Stuyvesant, a historically black Brooklyn neighborhood besieged by gentrification. He makes rent as an art handler, hanging expensive works from Manhattan's 1%, and spends his free time playing basketball at the local Y rather than putting energy into his stagnating career. He is also the last person to see Hannah before she disappears. When Hannah's fiancé, scion to old money Upper East Side family, refuses to call the police, Reddick sets out to learn for himself what happened to her. The search gives him a sense of purpose, pulling him through a dramatic cross-section of the city he never knew existed. But the truth of Hannah's fate is buried in the heart of many-layered mystery that, in its unraveling, shakes Reddick's conviction and lays bare the complicated machinery of money and power that connect the magisterial townhouses on the Upper East Side to the unassuming brownstones of Bed-Stuy. I don't know, did we not get any mention of Hannah? Of who she is? No? Well, she's at a party at the beginning of the book, and he meets her, and she disappears. And I think that's very promising. so I'm going to see what this has to say about gentrification. I always wonder. In fact, I will probably try to. I know a family that lives on the Upper East Side. I know a family that lives on the Upper West Side and a family that lives on the Upper East Side. The family that lives, they're both extremely well off, but one is much closer to what you or I would consider normal life than is the other. The other is, they're fabulously wealthy. They have one of those magisterial brownstones, and they own the whole thing. And it's been renovated inside from top to bottom. You'd never know it to look at the outside, but you go inside and it's amazing. And one of the people in that family is a teenage boy, and he and I text and Skype all the time. And he, a year ago, his parents thought maybe it'd be a good idea if I introduced him to reading. He'd been going to school, but he had no interest. Like most boys, he had no interest in reading. And he thought that was a dumb idea, and I said, I totally agree. Just take some suggestions, maybe dip your feet in, see what you think, satisfy your parents, get them off your back, that sort of thing, and then we can talk about other things. We can talk about, Game of Thrones or The Walking Dead or whatever. And he did. And I speak fluent teenage boy. I know exactly how they think and exactly what will work on them. And I want them all to read. I want them to become readers. I don't want them to embrace this silly dichotomy where boys don't think, they just make money. I don't want them to be that way. I don't want this kid to be that way, because if he is, he has no incentive ever to be more than himself, to ever exceed his own mind. He's never going to have any incentive like that. He already has a trust fund that he lives on. And when he turns 21, he gets another trust fund that 10 people could live on at his lifestyle for the rest of his life. So I want him to step out of his mind quite a bit. And I gave him Bed-Stuy is Burning, the previous book on the gentrification that's sweeping across New York, that's making Manhattan a place for the super wealthy, where ordinary people can't afford to live. And that is lapping outwards to Brooklyn and the Bronx and whatnot. And I gave him that book, and he said, "What's this?" And I said, "Well, there are two things I want you to notice about this book. It's written really well, but I know that won't mean anything to you. Instead, I want you to notice two things. First, flip it over and see that the author isn't that much older than you are. And then flip it back and read what it's about." And he did. And he looked up, and he said, "Hey." And I said, "Yeah, you're the villain. If that doesn't make a book interesting, I don't know what will." And it worked. It worked. He read it, and he disagreed with a lot, and liked it a lot, and is hooked now on reading. He is firmly hooked on reading. I drew him in my long scale reel for boys like him is World War Z, and that worked. It never fails. But now he's interested in actually reading. Now it's all on me, as his father rather indelicately put it. It's all on me now, never to hand him a dud. And I know this. I don't need his father to tell me this. I didn't need his father to tell me that when his father was 18 years old. All I need to do now with this kid is hand him one book after another that will keep him reading. I only need to do that about 10 times in a row. And then he won't need me. I'm training wheels. Once that's done, he'll have the bug himself. He'll be going to the Strand every week himself. He won't need me to prompt him to do that. And BookTube, I don't know if you've got the impression in the last 2 years, but I can handle that challenge. I will not fail. And I think that's fascinating. I was reading a letter in the Atlantic Monthly that I showed you shamefacedly yesterday. I was reading the letters column, and there was an article in there about the rise of the super wealthy, the rise of a new wealthy class in America, a ruling class essentially, because that's what they'll do, because they have all the financial advantages that will lead them to do that. And there were letters in the letters column this time around responding to that article, and one of them was from someone who is in the moneyed class that the article was taking square aim at. And the letter writer said, we read the Atlantic faithfully only to watch ourselves pilloried and called villains. I guess we must get some satisfaction out of it because we all subscribe. So that will be, this will be fascinating. I confess, I read the first chunk of pages already of this thing and very much liked the certainty of the writing. So I don't think it will disappoint unless it disappoints in the final act, which so many of them do. So this is Restoration Heights. This is my Tuesday reads. Restoration Heights, The Sky is Falling, in which Pete Siskin says that it's the apocalyptic pop culture of the last 20 years that gave rise to not only our present political condition, but to our present political divide, the corrosive divide where people can't talk to each other. I think that's fascinating. Absolutely fascinating. There is no conversation possible between the different quote-unquote sides in Avatar. Of course there's no conversation possible between the sides in, for instance, The Walking Dead or Game of Thrones. You see his point. He's talking about an absolutism where there is no common cause and common cause cannot happen. And I think that's fascinating. I will look forward to the book. Then a reread of We That Are Young. I'm hoping to pick up a lot of stuff that I missed the first time. And this Megillah of a thing, Salvation. Just an old-fashioned ship comes out of nowhere space opera from an author I really want to like. So I haven't liked any of his big stuff, so I'm just going to keep trying until it works. And that's it. That is my Tuesday reads. There's no such thing as Tuesday reads. I keep talking about it like there is. I know there isn't anything such thing as Tuesday reads, but still, feel free to tell me what you're reading today. I'd love to hear it. And I'll wrap this up, but I'll be back. Thank you, BookTube.